The alarm bells rang across New Terra Station like thunder in the void. Admiral Kate Morrison rushed through the metal corridors as her boots echoed against the floor. Something had triggered the deep space sensors, and whatever it was had come from outside human space. Kate reached the command center where dozens of officers worked at their stations. The main screen showed a small ship tumbling through space like a broken toy. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before. The hull was smooth and curved with strange markings that glowed with a soft blue light. "Report," Kate said as she took her position at the command chair. Lieutenant Commander Jake Sullivan turned from his console. "Admiral, we detected the vessel 3 hours ago. It appeared suddenly on our sensors as if it came out of hyperspace, but we didn't detect any jump signature. The ship is badly damaged and life support is failing." Kate studied the alien vessel on the screen. After 300 years of space travel, humans had never encountered another intelligent species. They had found dead worlds and ancient ruins, but nothing alive. This changed everything. "Any response to our communications?" Kate asked. "Negative, Admiral. We've tried every frequency and protocol we know. The ship's power is almost gone." Kate made her decision quickly. "Launch a rescue shuttle, full hazmat protocols. I want that ship and whoever is inside brought aboard immediately." "Doctor." Alex Carter arrived at the docking bay just as the rescue team returned. He was the station's chief scientist and the closest thing they had to a xenobiology expert, though his knowledge was all theory until now. The alien ship was small, barely larger than a human shuttle, and the damage was extensive. Scorch marks covered the hull and several sections had been completely torn away. The rescue team carefully extracted a single occupant from the alien vessel. The being was humanoid but clearly not human. It stood about 6 feet tall with pale, gray skin and 4 arms. Its head was larger than a human's with huge black eyes that took up much of its face. The creature wore a form-fitting suit that seemed to be part clothing and part life support system. Alex followed as they carried the alien to the medical bay. The being was unconscious but alive according to the scanners. Its vital signs were weak but stable. As the medical team worked to keep it alive, Alex examined the small device clutched in one of its 4 hands. The device was clearly some kind of communication equipment. It was warm to the touch and covered in the same glowing symbols they had seen on the ship. As Alex carefully examined it, the device suddenly activated. A holographic display appeared above it showing images and what appeared to be star charts. "Admiral Morrison to medical bay," came Kate's voice over the intercom. "Carter here," Alex replied. "Doctor, I need you in briefing room 3 immediately. Bring that device." Alex found Kate waiting with Jake Sullivan and several other senior officers. The device sat on the table between them as Alex activated the holographic display again. The images that appeared made everyone in the room go silent. The first image showed a peaceful-looking world with blue oceans and green continents. Cities could be seen on the surface, but they were unlike human cities. These were organic-looking structures that seemed to grow from the ground like massive trees. The next image showed the same world, but now it was gray and lifeless. The cities were gone, replaced by dark metallic structures. More images followed, showing other worlds suffering the same fate. Alex counted 7 different planets, all transformed from living worlds into dead industrial complexes. Then came images of the attackers. The beings in the holograms were tall and skeletal with black armor that seemed to be part of their bodies. They moved in perfect coordination like a swarm of insects. Their ships were massive and angular, covered in spikes and weapon ports. Everything about them suggested violence and conquest. "My God," whispered Jake as he watched the images. "It's a war. Someone is destroying entire civilizations." The final image showed a symbol that repeated throughout the display. It was clearly some kind of distress signal or plea for help. Along with the symbol came what appeared to be star charts, showing the location of the remaining unconquered worlds. "Doctor, can you make sense of any of this?" Kate asked. Alex studied the display carefully. "Admiral, this appears to be a detailed record of a systematic campaign of conquest and destruction. Based on the star charts, the attacks are moving in our general direction. If this pattern continues, human space could be next." Kate stood and walked to the window overlooking the docking bay where the alien ship sat. Doctor, I want you to work around the clock to decode as much of this as possible. Jake, prepare a full report for Fleet Command. We need to know everything about these attackers, and we need to know it fast. 3 days later, the alien regained consciousness. Alex was at its bedside when the large black eyes opened and focused on him. The creature tried to speak, but only weak sounds came out. Alex offered it water, but the alien shook its head weakly. Instead, the alien pointed to the communication device on the nearby table. Alex brought it over, and the creature's 4 hands moved across its surface with practiced ease. The holographic display activated again, but this time it was different. New images appeared showing the alien's own species. They called themselves the Klaxon, and they were part of something called the Galactic Harmony Council. 7 different species worked together in peace, sharing knowledge and resources across dozens of star systems. They had no weapons of war because they had never needed them. For thousands of years they had lived in perfect peace. Then came the Vorthak Empire. The images showed how quickly the peaceful civilizations fell. The Vorthak used biological weapons that could kill entire populations in days. They had technology that could reshape planets to suit their needs. Worst of all, they could convert the minds of their prisoners, turning them into mindless slaves. The alien, who identified itself as Zara 9, managed to explain through the device that it was a diplomat. It had been sent to find help from any species capable of fighting the Vorthak. The Council's databases showed that certain worlds produced what they called Deathworlders, beings evolved from planets so hostile that survival required becoming natural warriors. Earth was listed as one of the most dangerous death worlds in the galaxy. Kate felt a chill as she read the translation. Humans were classified as potential warriors by alien standards, but they had never faced anything like this Vorthak Empire. Still, if entire civilizations were dying, they had to try. Zara 9, Kate said, speaking slowly so the translator could work. How much time do we have? The alien's response made everyone in the room go cold. According to their calculations, the Vorthak would reach the outer edge of human space in less than 6 months. 3 billion beings were already dead, and billions more would follow unless someone could stop them. Kate made her decision. She activated the emergency communication system that could reach every human colony and military base across their territory. For the first time in human history, she was about to issue a general mobilization order against an alien threat. As the message went out across human space, Zara 9 watched through the window at the human ships moving around New Terra Station. The alien had seen many species fall to the Vorthak Empire. Most had tried to negotiate or hide. Some had fought bravely but briefly. None had ever responded to the threat by immediately preparing for war. The response to Admiral Morrison's mobilization order came faster than anyone expected. Within 6 hours of the transmission, every human colony and military outpost in the sector was sending confirmations. Ships were already moving toward New Terra from 12 different star systems. Captain Ryan Brooks received the order while his assault carrier UNS Defiance was conducting training exercises near the Proxima colony. His crew of 800 Marines and support staff had been preparing for potential conflicts with human pirates or rebels. None of them had ever imagined they would be fighting aliens. "Captain, we have incoming transmissions from the fleet," reported his communications officer. "Admiral Morrison is requesting all available ships to report to New Terra immediately." Ryan studied the tactical display showing dozens of ships already in motion. Heavy cruisers, destroyers, assault carriers, and support vessels were all converging on New Terra. The scale of the response was unprecedented in human military history. "Set course for New Terra, maximum speed," Ryan ordered. "And send a message. To all ships in our battle group, we move as one unit." On New Terra Station, Dr. Alex Carter worked around the clock with Zara 9 to understand the alien technology. The Klaxon diplomat had recovered enough to provide detailed information about the Vorthak Empire and their methods of conquest. "The Vorthak do not negotiate," Zara 9 explained through the translation device. "They see all individual consciousness as a disease that must be cured. They convert entire populations into a single mind under their control." Alex found the concept Horrifying, but also tactically important. How do they coordinate their attacks? Do they have a central command structure? Yes, but it is unlike anything your species would understand. They think as one mind across vast distances. When one Vorthak learns something, they all know it, instantly. This makes them very dangerous in battle. The information was immediately passed to the military leaders gathering at New Terra. General Ben Miller had arrived 2 days earlier aboard the massive dreadnought UNS Vengeance to take overall command of the growing fleet. His ship alone carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Miller stood in the main briefing room looking at the holographic display showing the positions of human ships throughout the sector. What he saw amazed even his experienced mind. In less than a week, over 300 warships had responded to the call. More were arriving every hour. "General, we have confirmation from the Mars Defense Fleet," reported his aide. "Admiral Johnson is bringing 60 ships, including 2 battleships and their full support groups." Miller nodded as he watched the tactical display update. The human response was overwhelming, but he wondered if it would be enough. According to Zara 9, the Vorthak Empire controlled hundreds of worlds and had been building their war machine for decades. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker worked with her team to retrofit human ships with technology reverse-engineered from Zara 9's vessel. The alien ship used a form of faster-than-light communication that could coordinate entire fleets across vast distances instantly. "The principle is similar to quantum entanglement," Lisa explained to General Miller during a technical briefing. "But the aliens have found a way to maintain the connection over galactic distances. If we can adapt this to our ships, we can coordinate the entire fleet as one unit." The work was dangerous and complex. Human technology was more advanced in some ways, particularly in weapons and armor. But the aliens had mastered forms of physics that humans were only beginning to understand. Lisa's engineering teams worked in shifts around the clock to install the new communication systems. Major Sam Torres led the Colonial Marines in preparation for what everyone knew would be ground combat. His soldiers were trained for fighting. Other humans, but the intelligence from Zara 9 suggested the Vorthak used tactics and weapons unlike anything in human experience. They use biological weapons that can kill through environmental suits, Torres briefed his unit commanders. They also have the ability to convert captured soldiers into their own forces. Every engagement will be a fight to the death. The Marines trained with new weapons designed specifically for fighting the Vorthak. Dr. Carter had worked with the engineering teams to develop ammunition that could disrupt the aliens' biological systems. They also practiced fighting in full environmental suits to protect against the Vorthak's biological weapons. Captain Brooks arrived at New Terra 5 days after receiving the mobilization order. His battle group included 12 ships and over 10,000 Marines. As his ship approached the station, he was amazed by what he saw. The space around New Terra had become the largest gathering of military force in human history. Hundreds of foreign ships moved in organized formations while supply vessels carried ammunition, fuel, and equipment between them. The civilian population of New Terra watched from the station's observation decks as their system filled with instruments of war. "Captain, Admiral Morrison is requesting your immediate presence at the command briefing," his communications officer reported. Brooks found himself in a room with over 50 ship captains and military commanders. Admiral Morrison stood at the front of the room with General Miller and Dr. Carter. Behind them, the holographic display showed the current positions of both human and Vorthak forces. "Gentlemen and ladies," Morrison began, "we now have confirmed intelligence on the Vorthak Empire's next target. Long-range reconnaissance has identified a massive Vorthak fleet moving toward the Kepler 442 system. That system contains the last major stronghold of the Galactic Harmony Council." The display zoomed in to show the Kepler 442 system with its 7 inhabited worlds. Each world showed signs of massive defensive preparations, but the approaching Vorthak fleet was enormous. Over 2,000 ships were moving toward the system in perfect formation.
"Our intelligence suggests the Council forces have perhaps 300 ships remaining," General Miller continued. "They cannot hope to defeat the Vorthak alone. If Kepler 442 falls, the Vorthak will have eliminated all organized resistance
in this sector of the galaxy." Captain Brooks studied the tactical display with growing concern. The human fleet was large and powerful, but they would be facing an enemy with superior numbers and unknown technology. Many of the human ships were designed for peacekeeping operations rather than major fleet actions. "What are our orders, Admiral?" asked Captain Sarah Kim, commander of the battleship UNS Thunder. Morrison looked around the room at the assembled commanders. "We are going to Kepler 442 to engage the Vorthak fleet. This will be humanity's first major space battle against an alien enemy. Our goal is to prevent the destruction of the Council worlds and establish a defensive line." The briefing continued for several hours as the commanders planned their attack. The human fleet would jump to Kepler 442 in 3 waves, with the fastest ships arriving first to assess the situation. The main battle fleet would follow, and the support vessels would come last with supplies and reinforcements. Dr. Carter provided final intelligence updates on Vorthak weapons and tactics. The aliens used energy weapons that could penetrate most known armor. They also employed boarding parties that would attempt to convert captured crew members. Every human ship would need to be prepared for close combat. As the briefing ended, the commanders returned to their ships to prepare for departure. The human fleet now numbered over 800 vessels, with more still arriving. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Zara 9 watched the preparations from the observation deck of New Terra Station. The alien had seen many species respond to the Vorthak threat. Most had tried diplomacy first, then prepared defenses, and finally attempted to evacuate their populations when all else failed. The humans had skipped directly to preparation for total war. In less than 1 week, they had assembled a force larger than anything the Galactic Harmony Council had managed in years of preparation. Zara 9 began to understand why Earth was classified as a death world in the galactic databases. These beings did not just fight to survive. They fought to win. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system and immediately found themselves in the middle of a battle. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as alien ships fired at each other with weapons that turned entire vessels into burning wreckage. Admiral Morrison watched the tactical display from the bridge of her flagship as the situation became clear. The Galactic Council forces were badly outnumbered and losing ground fast. 7 different alien species fought together against the Vorthak fleet, but their ships were designed for exploration and trade, not war. "Admiral, we count approximately 300 Council ships still active," reported Commander Nina Davis from her intelligence station. "The Vorthak fleet has over 1,800 vessels in the system. Council forces are trying to defend the 4th planet, but they're being pushed back." Morrison studied the battle with experienced eyes. The Council ships moved in defensive formations, trying to protect civilian evacuation ships that were fleeing the inner planets. The Vorthak vessels attacked in perfect coordination, striking weak points with surgical precision. "General Miller, are your forces ready?" Morrison asked over the communication system. "All ships report ready for combat, Admiral. We have 847 vessels in 3 battle groups. Marine assault ships are prepared for boarding actions." Morrison made her decision quickly. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. We are engaging the Vorthak fleet immediately. Battle Group Alpha will attack their left flank. Battle Group Beta will move to support the Council forces. Battle Group Gamma will target their command ships. All units, weapons free." The human fleet accelerated toward the battle with a speed that surprised both sides. Human warships were built for aggressive tactics, and their engines were more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen before. Within minutes, the first human ships were in weapons range. Lieutenant Paul Mitchell led the first fighter squadron into combat from Captain Brooks's assault carrier. His small craft was fast and heavily armed compared to the fighter ships used by other species. As he approached the Vorthak formation, he could see their ships up close for the first time. The Vorthak vessels were massive and angular, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. They moved with mechanical precision, each ship perfectly coordinated with the others. But Paul noticed something important. They seemed to react slowly to unexpected attacks. "This is Red Leader to all fighters," Paul transmitted. "Target their weapon clusters and engine sections. Use hit-and-run tactics. Don't let them lock onto you." The human fighters dove into the Vorthak formation like angry hornets. Their missiles struck critical systems, while their energy weapons carved through armor plating. The Vorthak ships tried to respond, but their massive size made them slow to turn. On the bridge of the UNS Defiance, Captain Brooks watched his fighters tear into the enemy formation. The Vorthak were powerful, but they fought like machines following predetermined patterns. Human pilots were trained to improvise and adapt during combat. "Captain, we have multiple Vorthak ships breaking formation to pursue our fighters," reported his tactical officer. "They're moving away from the main battle." Brooks smiled grimly. "Perfect. All weapons target the ships that are out of position. Marine assault teams prepare for boarding operations." The human battle fleet struck the Vorthak forces with overwhelming firepower. Human weapons were designed to punch through heavy armor, and their targeting systems were more accurate than anything the Vorthak had encountered. Ship after ship exploded under the human assault. But the Vorthak fought back with terrible efficiency. Their energy weapons could slice through human armor, and their missiles carried biological payloads that could kill entire crews. Several human ships were destroyed in the first exchange of fire. Commander Davis worked frantically to analyze Vorthak communications and tactics from her intelligence station. The alien ships coordinated perfectly through some kind of shared consciousness, but this also meant they all reacted the same way to threats. "Admiral, I'm detecting a pattern in their movements," Davis reported. "They seem to share information instantly, but they also share the same tactical responses. If we can confuse one ship, we might confuse their entire formation." Morrison immediately understood the implications. "All ships, implement random attack patterns. No ship should attack the same target twice in a row. Keep them guessing." The change in human tactics had an immediate effect. The Vorthak fleet began to show signs of confusion as their shared consciousness tried to process dozens of different attack patterns simultaneously. Their perfect coordination began to break down. Meanwhile, the surviving Council ships watched in amazement as the human fleet tore into their enemies. Council Speaker Yeath stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. "How many ships did these humans bring?" asked his tactical officer. "Over 800, Yeath replied quietly. "They brought more warships to help us than our entire species has built in the last century." The battle reached its climax when General Miller's dreadnought UNS Vengeance engaged the largest Vorthak command ship. The alien vessel was over 3 kilometers long and covered in weapon systems, but the human battleship was designed specifically for this kind of fight. "All forward batteries concentrate fire on their command section," Miller ordered. "Marines, prepare for assault boarding." The massive exchange of fire lit up space as the two giant ships hammered each other with everything they had. The Vorthak ship's armor was thick, but human weapons were designed to crack open heavily defended targets. Slowly, the alien vessel began to show damage. Lieutenant Paul Mitchell saw his chance when the Vorthak command ship's defenses were focused on the dreadnought. He led his squadron in a direct attack on the alien ship's bridge section. Their missiles struck critical systems and caused massive internal explosions. "This is Red Leader," Paul transmitted. "The big one is hurt bad. All fighters, focus on keeping their escorts off the Vengeance." The Vorthak command ship tried to retreat, but it was too late. The human dreadnought's final salvo penetrated its main reactor, and the massive vessel exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen across the system. With their command ship destroyed, the Vorthak fleet began to lose coordination. Individual ships continued to fight, but their perfect unity was broken. Human ships pressed their advantage, destroying enemy vessels faster than they could respond. After 6 hours of battle, the surviving Vorthak ships retreated toward the edge of the system. They had lost over half their fleet, while the humans had destroyed less than 50 vessels. The first major space battle between humans and aliens was a decisive human victory. Council Speaker Yeath requested permission to come aboard Admiral Morrison's flagship to meet the humans who had saved his people. When he arrived, he found Morrison in the command center coordinating rescue operations for both human and alien survivors. "Admiral Morrison," Yeath said through his translation device, "My people owe you a debt we can never repay. You have saved billions of lives today." Morrison looked tired but determined. "Speaker Yeath, this battle is just the beginning. Our intelligence suggests the Vorthak have much larger fleets in their home systems. If we're going to stop them permanently, we need to work together. Yith studied the human admiral with new understanding. His people had always believed that advanced civilizations naturally became peaceful as they grew in wisdom. The humans had proven that sometimes peace could only be protected by those willing to fight for it. "What do you need from us?" Yith asked. Morrison smiled for the first time since the battle began. "Everything you know about Vorthak technology, tactics, and territory. We're going to take this war to them before they can rebuild and attack again." As the two fleets began working together to plan their next move, long-range sensors detected new movement from deep in Vorthak space. The enemy was already preparing their response to this unexpected defeat. Intelligence gathered from the destroyed Vorthak command ship revealed the location of their core worlds and production facilities. General Miller stood in the briefing room aboard his flagship, studying holographic displays that showed the heart of the Vorthak Empire. What he saw made him understand the true scale of the threat humanity faced. "The Vorthak control over 200 star systems," reported Commander Davis as she analyzed the captured data. "Their industrial capacity is massive. They can build ships faster than we can destroy them if we only fight defensive battles." Admiral Morrison studied the tactical displays with growing concern. The Vorthak homeworld was protected by orbital defense platforms and surrounded by manufacturing worlds that produced new warships around the clock. Even worse, long-range sensors showed 3 separate Vorthak fleets moving toward human space. "We need to hit them before they can coordinate a counterattack," Morrison decided. "If we wait for them to come to us, they'll have overwhelming numbers." Dr. Richard Hayes worked with his research team to develop new weapons specifically designed to fight the Vorthak. The captured alien technology had revealed weaknesses in their biological systems that human weapons could exploit. But the moral implications of what they were creating troubled him deeply. "The quantum resonance weapon will disrupt their hive mind connection," Hayes explained to the military commanders. "But our tests show that severing the connection doesn't restore individual consciousness. It simply kills them." Colonel Maria Santos led the planning for ground operations on Vorthak-controlled worlds. Her intelligence teams had identified several key industrial planets that supplied the Vorthak war machine. Destroying these facilities could cripple their ability to build new ships, but it would require massive planetary assault operations. "The Vorthak have converted entire populations into workers for their factories," Santos briefed the Marine commanders. "We estimate there are over 50 billion converted beings on their industrial worlds. Most of them were once members of conquered species." The moral weight of this information fell heavily on the human commanders. They were preparing to attack worlds filled with victims of Vorthak conquest, beings who had been stripped of their individual consciousness and turned into slaves. General Miller made the difficult decision to divide the human fleet into 3 separate battle groups. The largest group would make a direct assault on the Vorthak homeworld to draw their attention. A second group would attack their primary industrial systems to cripple production. The third group would defend human space against the approaching Vorthak counterattack fleets. Captain Brooks volunteered to lead the assault on Vorthak 7, the most heavily defended industrial world in their empire. His battle group included 200 ships and 50,000 Marines specially trained for planetary operations. The mission was considered extremely dangerous with little chance of complete success. "Our goal is to destroy their main production facilities and rescue as many converted beings as possible," Brooks explained to his unit commanders. "Intelligence suggests that some recently converted individuals might still retain enough of their original consciousness to be saved." The 3 human battle groups departed from Kepler 442 simultaneously, using different hyperspace routes to avoid detection. Council Speaker Yith provided detailed intelligence about Vorthak territory and defensive positions. His people had been studying their enemies for years, looking for any weakness that could be exploited. Colonel Santos and her assault teams reached Vorthak 7 first, arriving in stealth ships that could avoid detection by the planet's defense systems. What they found on the surface was worse than anyone had imagined. Entire cities had been converted into massive factories where converted beings worked without rest to build Vorthak war machines. "Colonel, we're detecting over 2 billion life signs on the planet," reported her intelligence officer. Most of them are concentrated in the industrial zones. The original cities have been completely rebuilt as production facilities. Santos watched through her reconnaissance drones as converted beings moved through the factories with mechanical precision. They had once been members of a dozen different species, but now they all moved and worked with identical motions. Their individual personalities had been completely erased. Sergeant First Class Tony Ross led the 1st Ground Assault Team to land on Vorthak 7. His Marines wore advanced environmental suits designed to protect against biological weapons while they moved through the industrial complexes. Their mission was to plant explosives in key facilities while avoiding contact with the converted workers. "Sergeant, we're getting strange readings from some of the workers," reported one of his Marines. "Some of them seem to be responding to our presence differently than the others." Ross examined the readings and realized what they were seeing. Some of the converted beings still retained fragments of their original consciousness. They were trying to communicate, but the Vorthak control systems prevented them from speaking or moving independently. "Command, we have a problem," Ross transmitted to Colonel Santos. "Some of these people might still be savable, but our explosives will kill everyone in the factories." The moral dilemma forced Santos to make an impossible choice. Destroying the factories would cripple Vorthak war production and potentially save billions of lives across the galaxy. But it would also kill millions of converted beings who might still be rescued. Meanwhile, General Miller's main battle group approached the Vorthak homeworld and found it protected by the most powerful defense network they had ever encountered. Orbital platforms the size of moons surrounded the planet, each one armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. "General, we count over 500 defense platforms plus 300 mobile defense ships," reported his tactical officer. "They have enough firepower to destroy our entire fleet several times over." Miller studied the defensive positions and realized they were facing a trap. The Vorthak had allowed them to approach the homeworld, knowing that the human fleet would be destroyed by the orbital defenses. But retreat was not an option. Too much depended on this mission succeeding. Dr. Hayes had been working around the clock to complete his quantum resonance weapon, and now he believed he had found a solution to their moral dilemma. The new version of the weapon could selectively target different types of consciousness, potentially freeing converted beings without killing them. The weapon can now distinguish between original consciousness and Vorthak-implanted control systems, Hayes explained to Admiral Morrison. "But we need to test it on a smaller scale before using it on entire planets." The test came when Captain Brooks's assault team encountered a group of recently converted Klaxon workers in one of the factories on Vorthak 7. These beings had been captured only weeks earlier, and their original personalities might still be intact beneath the Vorthak control systems. Sergeant Ross used a portable version of Hayes's weapon on the group of converted Klaxon. The results were both encouraging and horrifying. The Vorthak control systems were disrupted, and the aliens began to regain their individual consciousness, but the process was extremely painful and not all of them survived. "Colonel, the weapon works, but it's not perfect," Ross reported. "About half the subjects are recovering their original personalities. The others are dying as their biological systems fail without the Vorthak control network." Colonel Santos faced the most difficult decision of her military career. She could order the use of the quantum weapon on the entire planet, potentially freeing millions of converted beings, but also killing millions more. Or she could proceed with the original plan to destroy the factories, ensuring the deaths of everyone inside but crippling Vorthak war production. As she prepared to make her choice, long-range sensors detected something that changed everything. A massive Vorthak fleet was approaching from the core systems, larger than anything they had encountered before. If the industrial worlds were not neutralized quickly, this new fleet would have unlimited resources to continue the war. The fate of the galaxy now depended on the choices made by a human colonel standing in an alien factory, surrounded by the victims of conquest, holding a weapon that could either save or destroy millions of lives. Just as Colonel Santos prepared to make her impossible choice, new ships appeared at the edge of the Vorthak 7 system. These vessels were clearly human, but different from the military fleet that had brought her here. The lead ship transmitted identification codes that made Santos stop everything she was doing. Ambassador Linda Carter, Dr. Alex Carter's sister, had arrived with a diplomatic fleet and a solution that nobody had expected. Her ships carried not just diplomats but also Elder Kef, an ancient alien who had lived for over 3,000 years and remembered the galaxy before the Vorthak Empire existed. "Colonel Santos, this is Ambassador Carter," came the transmission. "Hold all offensive operations immediately. We have new information that changes everything about this war." Santos reluctantly ordered her Marines to stop planting explosives and withdraw to safe positions. She had been minutes away from destroying the factories, but something in the ambassador's voice suggested this delay might save more lives than the attack would. On the flagship approaching the Vorthak homeworld, General Miller received the same message. Admiral Morrison joined him in the command center as they watched Ambassador Carter's diplomatic fleet move toward the heavily defended planet. The orbital defense platforms powered up their weapons, preparing to destroy the new arrivals. But then something unprecedented happened. The Vorthak defenses suddenly went silent. Elder Kef had used an ancient communication protocol that had not been heard in the galaxy for over 1,000 years. The message he sent was simple, but shocking. He identified himself as one of the original witnesses to the Vorthak transformation and requested permission to speak with the Vorthak Prime Entity. "General Miller, this is Ambassador Carter," came the transmission from the diplomatic ship. "Elder Kef has information about the Vorthak that will change how we understand this entire conflict. The Prime Entity has agreed to a temporary ceasefire to hear what he has to say." Miller was suspicious but curious. In all their battles with the Vorthak, the aliens had never shown any interest in communication or negotiation. The fact that they were willing to listen suggested that Elder Kef knew something extremely important. The meeting took place on a neutral asteroid between the human fleet and the Vorthak homeworld. Ambassador Carter, Elder Kef, Admiral Morrison, and General Miller met with representatives of the Vorthak Empire, including the Prime Entity itself, a massive creature that seemed to be part machine and part living tissue. Elder Kef spoke first, his ancient voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Prime Entity, I was present when your species first faced the Great Plague. I remember when the Vorthak were individuals like all the other species in the galaxy. The Prime Entity's response came through mechanical translators, but carried an emotion that surprised everyone present. Elder Kef, your memory is correct. We were once individuals, but the plague of minds killed our consciousness one by one. Only by joining together could we survive." Elder Kef nodded sadly. "Yes, and in saving yourselves, you lost what made you who you were. But the plague has been gone for 800 years. You continue to convert other species not because you must, but because you no longer remember why you originally chose unity." Ambassador Carter watched as the truth began to emerge. The Vorthak Empire had not started as conquerors. They had been a peaceful species forced to merge their consciousness to survive a cosmic plague that killed individual minds. But after centuries of collective existence, they had forgotten their original purpose and began to see individual consciousness as inherently wrong. Dr. Alex Carter, participating through quantum communication from New Terra Station, presented his research findings. "We have developed a hybrid consciousness technology that allows for both individual identity and voluntary collective experience. Beings can choose to connect temporarily while maintaining their personal consciousness. The Prime Entity considered this information for a long time before responding. Show us this technology. If what you claim is possible, it could restore what we lost without destroying what we have become." The demonstration took place on Vorthak 7 with volunteers from both species. Colonel Santos watched as the new technology was used on a group of recently converted Klaxon workers. Unlike the painful process of Dr. Hayes's original weapon, this new approach gently separated individual consciousness from the collective while preserving the benefits of both. The results were remarkable. The Klaxon regained their individual personalities and memories, but they could still choose to connect with the collective when they wanted to share knowledge or coordinate complex tasks. They were no longer slaves to the hive mind, but they could access its benefits voluntarily. Sergeant Ross observed the process carefully and reported to Colonel Santos. "Ma'am, it's working better than we hoped. The subjects are fully conscious and free to make their own choices, but they can still communicate instantly with others who have the same technology." The success of the demonstration convinced the Vorthak Prime entity to authorize a larger test. Over the following weeks, the new consciousness technology was implemented on an entire planet of converted beings. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Beings who had been enslaved for decades suddenly remembered who they had been before conversion. But instead of rejecting the collective entirely, many chose to maintain voluntary connections that allowed them to work together more effectively than ever before. The war that had seemed destined to destroy entire civilizations suddenly became a rescue mission. Human ships worked alongside reformed Vorthak vessels to implement the new technology across hundreds of worlds. The process was slow and complex, but it offered hope for billions of converted beings. Admiral Morrison negotiated the final peace treaty with the reformed Vorthak Federation. The agreement established the Terran Defense Corps, a joint military organization that would protect the rights of all conscious beings to choose their own form of existence. The treaty also included provisions for the gradual implementation of hybrid consciousness technology throughout the galaxy. Any species could choose to adopt the technology, but none would be forced to change their natural form of consciousness. Captain Brooks commanded one of the first mixed crews with humans, Klaxon, reformed Vorthak, and members of other species working together. The cooperation between former enemies proved that understanding could overcome even the deepest conflicts. 5 years after the first desperate message from Zara 9, the galaxy had entered an era of unprecedented cooperation. The Galactic Harmony Council was rebuilt as the Galactic Consciousness Alliance, with humans serving as protectors of diversity in all its forms. Elder Kef lived to see the transformation he had hoped for during centuries of war. In his final years, he often said that the humans had taught the galaxy its most important lesson. Sometimes peace could only be achieved by those willing to fight for the right of others to be different. Admiral Morrison, now an elderly woman, stood on the observation deck of New Terra Station, watching human and alien children playing together in the gardens below. Above them, the combined fleets of a dozen species patrolled the stars, ensuring that no being would ever again face extinction for the crime of consciousness. The galaxy had learned that diversity was not weakness, but strength, and that true unity came not from forcing everyone to be the same, but from protecting everyone's right to be different. The humans who had been called Deathworlders had become the guardians of life in all its infinite varieties.